Thanks for taking the time to answer a few questions about Phantom, Rocker, and Slick. This won't take long. First question, can you tell me a little bit about how you first discovered this album?
There was a brief period in the early mid-'80s when MTV was spitballing what might work. Most of it was garbage, but Men Without Shame from this album really hit the spot.
There's a certain breed who feel the need to put people in their place.
Also, the Cruzados, Motorcycle Girl.
Motorcycle girl, I love you.
Check it out.
This week's request comes from Wayne Rouse. Thanks, Wayne. Wayne suggested the self-titled album from Phantom, Rocker, and Slick, a band I didn't even know existed until I got this recommendation, but seems quite intriguing. Is that a used It's the rhythm section of the Stray Cats, along with guitarist Earl Slick, who played with a bunch of folks, most notably David Bowie and John Lennon. Speaking of Earl Slick, I read something interesting earlier this week. People ask me about my first name a lot, as you might expect. You just don't meet that many folks named Vaylor out there. I've never once found my name on a keychain at the Disney gift shop. When people ask me where my name comes from, the short answer I usually give is that my folks made it up, which is true. But here's the longer version. When I was a kid, I asked my mom about where the name Vaylor came from, and she told me that she and my dad had decided that they would name a boy for courage and a girl for music. So my name derives from Valor. And my sister's name is Melody. But years later, when I asked my dad about this, he dismissed it. He said he just liked the sound of the word, and if anything, he was inspired by Baylor University. But here comes the funny part, all right? Vaylor was not the first name they landed on. For quite a long time, my dad wanted to name me Mac. In all seriousness, he wanted my name to be Mac Trucks.
Hit the road. Be bold.
I even have a telegram that was sent from the Allman Brothers to the hospital when I was born, addressed to Linda, my mom, and Mac. Man, if I'd grown up with the name Mac Trucks, well, I can't see that ending well for anyone. And that brings me to what I found out this week. Turns out that Earl Slick got his start with a singer-songwriter named Jimmy Mack in a band called Mack Truck. So I guess I have some kind of coincidental taxonomical relationship with Earl Slick. And it just so happens that this week is his 70th birthday. Looking closer at the Phantom, Rocker, and Slick album, I see that there are guest appearances by both Nicky Hopkins and Keith Richards. That's not nothing. And it turns out there's a kind of 6 degrees of separation thing between me and this album. See, it was co-produced and engineered by Michael Barbiero, who has worked on just about everything that Warren Haynes has ever recorded. Dude, Michael Barbiero's production credits are extensive. Picture Book by Simply Red.
I'll keep holding on.
4 by Blues Traveler.
I ain't telling you no lie.
Mechanical Resonance by Tesla. And oh yeah, an album called Hittin' the Note by the Allman Brothers. Well, back in the day, I was quite the fan of the Stray Cats and of the John Lennon albums that have Earl Slick on it. This could be fun. Okay, let's check in with Wayne while I spin Phantom, Rocker, and Slick for the first time. Next question. What should someone who has never heard the album before know before listening for the first time? This could be anything you think is interesting, like stories about the personnel, or maybe an anecdote about the recording process. Anything that you think is particularly interesting.
I think probably the most relevant thing is the history of Earl Slick's collaborations with Bowie and John Lennon.
Yeah, he was on a bunch. Diamond Dogs, David Live, Young American, Station to Station with 70s Bowie. And then again in the 2000s with Heave and Reality, The Next Day. And then for John Lennon, he had Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey. Those are great. Right off the bat, this is not a rockabilly album, at least not entirely. You can hear that same gated reverb drum sound from Slim Jim Phantom that you hear on the Stray Cats albums, but Lee Rocker is playing an electric, not a doghouse, and Earl Slick's guitar kind of rides the line between glam and shred. And the tunes, again, there's a bit of rockabilly there, but it's not the central focus. If anything, the primary influence I'm hearing is the Rolling Stones. What You Want starts things off in a kind of updated T-Rex feel, giving us the first of many times that Earl Slick will lean heavily on what I call the get it on clave. But for having such a straight ahead feel, the changes in the verses are unexpected. E, G, B flat, A, as the song progresses, we start getting some layered guitar parts. Not exactly composed rhythm parts, and not exactly solos. Sort of simple double and triple stop figures that all stay pretty close to the chord. That layering technique is something that's featured on most of the album. Next tune is My Mistake.
I play for you my mistake. My mistake. I have made my mistake.
With guest guitarist Keith Richards. We get some more of that layering right off the bat, but this time it's pretty clear that there are two different guitarists playing with different rhythmic sensibilities. Keith on the left kind of laying back, and Earl Slick on the right playing a more composed part and emphasizing those pickup beats. And in between the verses, they throw in a third guitar playing fills. Pretty sure that's Keith too. Hollywood Distractions. It's got these halftime kind of verses with a drum pattern that's pretty close to Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac.
If I could, maybe I'd give.
According to my training, you don't get a second chance.
Then some more traditional Rolling Stones choruses. The thing that makes this song a bit challenging for me is the repeated Hollywood, Hollywood of the last chorus to end the song. The notes in the melody don't always match the notes and the changes they use.
Hollywood, 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 Hollywood.
Nicky Hopkins guests on No Regrets, kind of a country-inspired thing with piano and acoustic guitars. When we were listening together for the first time, Emily started singing George Michael's Last Christmas over the changes. Last Christmas, gave you my heart, but the very next day, threw it away. Well Kept Secret feels like 70s glam with 80s production, with maybe a bit of pop sensibilities in the use of the 3 minor, 6 minor turnarounds in the chorus. Fun little shreddy solo at the end. And speaking of shreddy, Men Without Shame is a drop D workout for Earl Slick, starting with an extended guitar intro and heavy use of natural and pinched harmonics and whammy bar dives throughout the song. But underneath it, they do the Rolling Stones thing, right? Straight groove, right? No swing in the groove, but they use the blues shuffle rhythm pattern on the guitar. The opening of Running from the Hounds is the same bass line that starts Hold Your Head Up by Argent. Only sped up a bit. Pretty standard 1-4-5 for the most part, but Earl Slick's solo is, well, it's pretty slick. Time on My Hands is a slow 6/8 kind of a soul-inspired tune with some quick and shreddy fills by both Earl Slick and to some extent Nicky Hopkins on piano. Same for the solos. Earl Slick starts with a flurry of notes, and then on the second chorus, Nicky Hopkins comes in underneath and adds his part. The fact that it doesn't sound more cluttered is a testament to the ears on the both of them. Sing for Your Supper. Man, is that a Rolling Stones sounding intro. But then in the choruses, it stays in 4/4, but they break it into 3/3 and 2, which is moderately interesting.
Sing for yourself, but sing for yourself and sing now, sing.
Though, like a lot of the songs on this album, I think they hit the hook just a few times too often for me. And finally, a ballady tune to end the album, Lonely Actions. Actually, this song gives me vibes of Squeeze at times. Very different from the other tunes on the album. Nice piano work on this one. I gotta be honest, my gut reaction after the first listen is that this album might not be for me. Not that it's not well executed, but it really is hard for me to get myself into a frame of mind for these kind of simple and straight ahead rock tunes anymore. But to be clear, I don't hate it. There are moments throughout that held my attention, for sure. And Earl Slick is a hell of a player. Got a sneaky suspicion that repeated listens is going to evolve my feelings quite a bit, though. So here's one more question for Wayne. Meanwhile, I'll be listening to Phantom Rocker and Slick a bunch more. Be right back. One last thing. What does this album mean to you personally?
What does it mean? One of those things that I love that no one has really heard. My other favorite would be Urban Dance Squad, Life and Perspectives of a Genuine Crossover.
Thanks, I'll check that out. So what do I think? Short version is Phantom, Rocker, and Slick sounds a lot to me like the Stones. And I'm sorry, but I've always been a Beatles over Stones guy. As I get older, though, I can't help but wonder how much of that I got from my dad. See, Butch had a pretty active and vocal dislike for the musicianship of certain members of the Rolling Stones, which always made it hilarious whenever he'd work with Chuck Leavell. But my opinion of the Stones is not nearly as vitriolic as my dad's. Put it this way, I like them enough that I saw them live for the Steel Wheels tour with Living Colour opening. Look, I rarely find myself thinking, I need to listen to some Stones right now, but it does happen. Let me be more specific, because the Stones have released a lot of music. The Brian Jones years I find to be slightly quirky, but ultimately harmless, satisfaction aside. The Ron Wood years I find to be lower effort. Sorry. But the Mick Taylor years, man, there was some good music made then. Worthy of the attention that it got, if still simple and loose. So when I say that Phantom, Rocker, and Slick sound a lot like the Stones to me, well, the bad news is that, on the whole, I won't be reaching for it very often. But the good news is that the Exile on Main Street / Goat's Head Soup / Tattoo You era of the Stones, that seems to be the most similar to what I'm hearing on this album. And Earl Slick really is a heck of a guitarist. Solid player with good time, good feel, and skills enough to inventively fill the space given with no clunkers and nothing overtly bombastic. Playing with that level of competence is a skill I certainly find enviable. Final thoughts, scale of 1 to 10, I give Phantom, Rocker, and Slick 19 nervous breakdowns.
Here it comes.
I'll see you next week.